Hello everyone, and welcome back to another gaming video. Today I picked up Mythic Odysseys of Theros for D&D. This is the, again, Theros book for D&D. This is the second book they've done for Magic the Gathering. They did a Ravnica book last year or a year before. So this is the follow-up to that one, and this takes place all on Theros, has information about the various Theros gods, just cool information for all those different gods, and like ways to play for those gods, like work for them or work against them, and so on. So Theros is one of my favorite Magic sets, just because I really like Greek mythology. Probably the first Theros set, the first three, I should say. So Theros, Born of the Gods, and Journey to Nyx are some of my favorite Magic sets ever. I just really like the flavor of those sets, and was kind of excited when they announced they were going to do a D&D book. So this book is out now, at least in brick and mortar stores. I think it's available online in like a week or two, because I think brick and mortar stores can sell it a little bit early. And this is the collector's cover. There's another regular cover as well. I believe the price of them is the same. So these are about, what's this, $49.95, and the regular cover is the same price. This collector's cover is generally only available at brick and mortar stores, so it kind of incentivizes players to shop locally. Anyway, so this is the book. We're going to go ahead and get it open. We're going to just do a quick kind of overview of the book. So here's our table of contents there. We have some just information about Theros, the history of Theros, and so on. Various languages that are used on Theros. So new character creation things. So there are these new supernatural talents. So these are things that players can start the game with, or the DM may award them one of these traits later in the game. I really like this one, which is Heroic Destiny. So Heroic Destiny, I'll just read an excerpt of it, is great deeds lie in your future, and it will take extraordinary effort to kill you before you accomplish those deeds. Choose or roll a random destiny using the Heroic Destiny table. Additionally, you gain the following traits. So Defy Death, you have advantage on death saving throws, so that's pretty big. And Hard to Kill says when you are reduced to 0 hit points but are not killed outright, you can drop to 1 hit point instead. Once you use this trait, you can't use it again until you finish a long rest. So that's a pretty strong trait there. And then you have these destinies. So these are the destinies of your hero. You roll a d6, or maybe you just choose one. So for example, if I rolled a 4, it says I'm destined to liberate my beloved from the clutches of the underworld. Another one, like number 6, is I'm destined to uncover the secret of the god's power, or of a god's power. There's the iconoclast trait. There's inscrutable. There's Nyxborn. So various different abilities. There's pious, which is, this one's kind of important because there's a whole piety, like religion aspect to this book as well. So as you do stuff for some of the gods, you gain points in piety, which is just like your devotion to that god, basically. So this pious trait starts you off at piety number 3. Generally, in the book, it says you can gain 1 piety per session, basically. You could also lose piety by doing stuff that is opposed to whatever god you're working for. Or, like, let's say you're working for Heliod and you do something that would actually anger Heliod, you could reduce it. But if you're doing stuff that benefits Heliod, you could increase it. And then there's these various thresholds that you get different abilities at certain piety thresholds. So I think it's like 3, 10, 25, and 50 are the numbers. And basically at each of those thresholds, you gain like a different, like some of them are spells you can use. But the interesting thing is once you gain it, if you go below that threshold, you actually lose that ability. So I guess the gods can give you stuff and also take it away, which is kind of cool. Here's some new races. So there's various things for humans here, but there's also centaurs. I think centaur has been in the game before, but I think it's actually in this book because I played a game or something that was actually playing a centaur. So there's centaurs. There's the Leonin, so the cat people, and all the abilities and things on how you actually, like their size class, how fast they move, and so on. Minotaurs. There's satyrs. What is this one? There's tritons. There's some subclasses here. So there's the new Bard College. So the College of Eloquence. There's also a Paladin Oath of Glory subclass option. A new background, so there's athlete background. So part of the just Greek history in general is kind of like the Olympic Games, or as in case of Magic, the Roman Games. And here's the chapter on all the different gods. So I think it's supposed to be Keranos right there, the god of storms. But here's basically a table of all the gods and their alignments, as well as their symbols and their cleric domains. If you were a cleric of Aetheros, for example, you would be either a death or a grave cleric. And then it'll tell you right here, some of these cleric domains are part of the Xanthar's guide, so you would have to have access to that to use some of them. There's the myths, and here's the whole thing about piety and how piety works. So let me see what the levels were. Yeah, so at 3, 10, 25, and 50, you gain a benefit detailed in the section describing the god's champion. So each god has his own chapter. So here's a whole chapter of Aetheros. Kind of like a brief description of Aetheros. The champions of Aetheros, if you're playing as Aetheros, it's like your alignment, the suggested classes. So classes for Aetheros are Cleric, Monk, Rogue, and Wizard. You can be any class, but those are like ones that are recommended. Cleric domains, as well as favor. So Aetheros' favor, devotion to Aetheros. And then there is actually earning and losing piety for each god. So for Aetheros to earn his favor, or earn basically piety points with him, you do something that is like providing coins and overseeing burial rites for those slain during a tragedy. But to lose piety with Aetheros, you might do something that says if you removing wealth from a corpse or defiling a tomb. So if you do that, Aetheros isn't going to be too pleased with you. There's some just more information about Aetheros, so that's pretty cool. We have a Feria, the god of the Polis. I think she was blue-white in the game. So just information about her. Again, how to gain and lose favor with her. Here's Erebos, the god of the dead. And again, more information about all of his, like gaining favor, and losing favor with Erebos. There's Heliod. So this chapter just describes the gods and basically like how the gods operate, things that the gods like, things that the gods dislike. So there's Iros, the god of victory. There's Karametra. So for example, Karametra's champions could be, her alignment is usually neutral but often good. Classes are cleric, fighter, paladin, ranger. Let's see. Suggested cleric domains are life and nature. Her backgrounds are acolyte, folk hero, guild artisan, soldier, or urchin. And then again, all the other information about Karametra is there. Here's Keranos, god of storms. There's Clothis, the god of fate. I think it's god of fate, right? Or god of destiny. She's the new one from Theros Beyond Death that kind of emerged. Krufix. Bogus, which is a chaotic evil god, basically, as far as the alignment goes. More stuff for Bogus. There's Nylea. I think it's the god of the hunt. Yep. So even if you weren't playing, even if you weren't wanting to play a Magic the Gathering themed campaign or game, you could totally just convert this to be Greek gods because it's basically just lifted from those gods and all that, those legends. So there's Phoenix, the god of deception. All the information about him. Perforos, the god of the forge. Thassa, god of the sea. And then we move into realms of gods and mortals. This is kind of like just like a map. So here's a map of some of the regions. Is this the calendar? Yeah, that's the Theros calendar there. Has a 13-month calendar, but I think the 13th month only shows up every few years. Kind of like a leap month, basically. Information about Ekros, so basically this is just kind of like detailing the people that live in these cities and the regions that they're in. And then you have, let's see. I think Miletus is one of them. Let me see if I think I skipped the page for that. Yeah, here it is. So Miletus is another region in Theros. There's Sessa, which I think is Karametra's region. There's Orskos, which is the kind of, it's kind of like a plains area, and it's where the cat people live, the Leonin. There is, I think it was Brimus, the king of Orsakos, or whatever he was called. He was a pretty strong card back in the day. There's a whole thing about the return. So basically, like the like areas of like the underworld where like the dead have come back from, stuff like that. There's this whole interesting dream table. So I guess if your players are taking a long rest, maybe even a short rest, they can maybe roll on this dream table, and it uses d6s depending on if you're rolling for a certain god. So for example, let's say here's Omens of Feria. You roll a d6, and then that is the dream that you have. But if you want to have like a more random dream, I guess you can do a d100. And I don't think these dreams do anything mechanically, but they may be used in, like, let's say somebody has a dream about, let's say they're doing a Aetheros dream, and it says the ground beneath a character's feet flows like water in a river. Maybe that ties into some other adventure, like later in your campaign. Like their dreams are kind of predicting what might happen in the future, so it's kind of cool. There's some stuff about like various god blessings and stuff like that. And here's where we get into the adventures section about. So this is a chapter. They do another chapter for each god. This is basically quest that you would do as a follower of Aetheros. So one of them is seal a secret path that the return use to escape the underworld. Aetheros doesn't like people getting out of the underworld, so if you do that quest, you would be gaining Aetheros' favor. If you're going kind of like not necessarily up against Aetheros, but these are um, people or things that kind of worship Aetheros that could be villains in your game. So, for example, you have a group of cult fanatics. A group of cult fanatics charges exorbitant prices for feudal rights, threatening to lead the dead astray unless they're shown proper respect. Another one could be a mercenary gladiator accuses a community of harboring returned and threatens to claim their leader's life to restore the balance. So these are basically followers of Aetheros that you might have to like go up against. Some various monsters that Aetheros might employ. So he might employ monsters like a giant vulture, a two-headed Cerberus, a hellhound, a lampin, invisible stalker, underworld Cerberus, spirit naga, or Philsakia, however that's pronounced. And here on the side, it'll tell you what book it's from. So MM being for the Monster Manual, or MOT is Mythic Odysseys of Theros. So there is a monster manual in the back of this book as well that has a few of these monsters in it. Here's basically how to use Aetheros as a villain for your campaign, as well as with some schemes he might be trying to do. Various maps as well. They basically just do this for each god. So here's a Feria. Some quests for her. Erebos, and so on. So basically, there's Karametra. So it gives you ideas of quests you can go on for these gods, or maybe even against these gods if you're doing that. There's some for Keranos. There's maps there. Clothis, Kruthix, Bogus. There's Parika, the god of I think it was the god of poison. What was it? Or god? I forget. It was actually who was the god of. There's Fenix, the god of deception again. There's some stuff for Perforos, Thassa. There's a whole section on Nautical Adventures, so kind of like you're traveling in a boat, kind of like in like the Odyssey. I think it was the Odyssey, traveling around, getting stuck at sea, doing various sea quests. Here's some stuff for various islands. So if you travel to islands, you can roll a d10 to determine what kind of inhabitants are on the island. So there's some pretty cool tables in this book as well. Basically, a whole section on adventures in the underworld. Let's see what else we got here. And here's I believe this is an adventure. So no silent secret is a kind of a pre-made adventure you can run your characters through, and that just goes on for a few pages here. And here's the next section is going to be treasures of Theros. So there's various magic items. There's origins for the items. You can roll on that table. So for example, if you roll a 9, it says the item is at least partially made of iron. So there are various traits for the items. Chariots, helm of the gods, which is basically each god has a helm that does basically lets you know if there's a celestial or a fiend within 30 feet of you, and then each helmet has a different spell that it can cast out of it. So for example, Heliod, like if you have the helmet Heliod, you can do Guiding Bolt. If you have the helmet Karametra, you can do Goodberry. If you have the Helm of Krufix, it can do Dissonant Whispers, Bogus's Hellish Rebuke, and so on. So more just various weapons. So here's the actual god weapon. So there's the Hammer of Perforos, the Bident of Thassa, and basically it'll say like a piety affects these as well. So if you happen to have the Hammer of Perforos and you have a piety of 10 or more, it'll say the hammer gains one randomly determined minor beneficial property. At 25, it gets a one randomly determined major property, and at 50, it gains one additionally randomly determined major beneficial property. And then it has these effects. And then basically, if you like, let's say you're doing a quest to destroy the hammer, it says to destroy the hammer, it must be taken to the realm of Tazarius. In the underworld, it must be clothed in clay from the mire of punishment. The heat of the hammer hardens the clay, which fuses it after 1 month. Once fully hardened, the clay-covered hammer must be swallowed and digested by a kraken. So basically, let's say you are tasked by Heliod to get this hammer and destroy it. You then have to follow those steps to actually destroy the hammer. There's the Bident of Thassa, we have the Bow of Nylea, the Spear of Heliod, the Whip of Erebos. I think only the 5 major gods actually have these weapons. Because in the set, it was, again, Perforos, Thassa, Nylea, Heliod, and Erebos were the 5 major gods. And then I think there was 10 sub-gods, I think, which were dual-colored in the game. So when the game came out, each major god was a single color, and then the sub-gods were dual-colored. But basically, here's all these different weapons from the gods and how to use them, how to destroy them. And then we moved into Fiends and Foes. This is kind of our monster manual supplement for this. So we have these various monsters here. So there's Anvil Rot, which is a player option, but also you might be fighting against them. So here's some stats for those guys. You have the Bronze Sable, the Burnished Heart, the Gold Forged Sentinel. There's the Archon of the Falling Stars. There is the Ashen Rider. I remember having that card. It was a mythic back in the day. And basically just various monsters you might fight against in Theros. And then, of course, if you have the monster manual, you can supplement like regular stuff in there as well to have to fight that. But these ones are specific to the game. So there's the Eater of Hope, the Nightmare Shepherd, the Eidolons. There's the Fleecebearer Lion, the Hundred-Handed Giant, Hundred-Handed one. Harpies. These Harpies, I think, are higher level than the Harpies in the monster manual, because these are challenge rating 5, so these are pretty strong Harpies. Let's see. Yeah, because I think in the monster manual, the Harpies in the monster manual had multi-attack, but it was like they would use claws and a club. These ones are using bite and claws. They can sing a song that basically like kind of put you under like a mind control temporarily. There's some hoplites. There's various hydras. So there's like, I think it's like Policanos. I think that's the World Eater. This one actually has heads that regenerate. There's the Fleece Ram, Nymphs, Nolids, Oracles, some various return things like zombies basically, or satyrs, Tritons. There's Typhoon. Typhoon is what's his challenge rating? 15. Arasta. I kind of was that a spider thing? I don't remember exactly what that one was. No, Arasta looks like Arasta has lair features. Here's Hypnoia. I think she was in the game as well. She's challenge rating 17, so pretty tough. And then I think the biggest monster in the manual is Thermocrithis. I'm not sure how I pronounced that right. Tromocathis, I guess. He's challenge rating 26. But that is just an overview of the Theros book for D&D. Quite a collection of information here. Basically, some really cool player options, the stuff with all the gods, with how the gods operate, to things you can do with the gods, like working for those gods, working against those gods, monster manual stuff, as well as just some new player options. So if you're into Magic the Gathering, if you're into D&D, this is out now. And it's a pretty good book. It's actually the second book I own for D&D. The only other book I own beside this is a Player's Handbook. So I didn't pick up the Ravnica one. I thought the Ravnica one was okay. I took a look at it. This just has, I think, and just a bigger fan of Greek mythology anyway, so this is just a kind of like a must-buy for me, so I picked it up today. It's pretty cool. I think it's available at brick and mortar stores right now, and then it'll be available online, I think, shortly, because I think Wizards of the Coast does a thing where they basically give brick and mortar stores kind of like a head start, and it incentivizes players to buy their stuff locally. So that's pretty cool. So again, this is Mythic Odysseys of Theros. It's a supplement for D&D, basically like a campaign setting set in a Greek mythology world, basically, or like a whole plane as far as magic goes. But that's gonna do it for this video. Remember to like, comment, share, and subscribe. And we'll see you next time. Take care.